Welcome to the Education Podcast, the learning conversations with Gillian Hamilton. I'm Gillian and I'm Chief Executive here at Education Scotland. And today I'm delighted to be joined by HM Chief Inspector of Education. Hello Janie, and thanks for being here today. Thanks very much for agreeing to take part in our podcast conversation. Janie, you and I have worked together for a fairly long time. I think it's over 6 years now, although we've known each other in Scottish education for a whole number of years. But you've recently taken on a new role as HM Chief Inspector of Education. So I'm really keen to have a chat this morning about how you're finding that role and the key priorities for you. Just before I open our conversation, Janie, probably for listeners, probably worth flagging that you and I are working in a space during education reform where we're operating as one organisation but with two increasingly distinct functions, the agency and also the inspectorate, which will become a new independent inspectorate. So Janie, before we talk about the curriculum work that HMI have been leading on, tell me a wee bit about what it's been like taking up the role.
Yes, hi Gillian, nice to see you. Nice to, strange talking in this format for a podcast today, but great to be here and just to have a chat with you about all things education and a bit about the role of the inspector and my role as well as we come in. So, and taking up the role it's been really exciting. It is an absolute pleasure and a privilege to be His Majesty's Chief Inspector of Education. I'm thoroughly enjoying it. It's busy, it's complex, but it brings me a lot of satisfaction. And I'm really keen that in my role I promote the work of the Inspectorate for the benefit of children, young people and adult learners in Scotland. So it's been a really quick few months for me.
How many months is it so far, Jane?
Oh, now you're getting into maths. So end of November, I took up post. So roughly about 6 months.
So about 6 months.
About 6 months.
And I know you've already announced that you're going to lead significant changes in the inspectorate, and I'm going to come to that. But it'd be good to chat first of all about the curriculum. There's a lot of interest in Scotland's curriculum just now. There's work already underway around a curriculum improvement cycle. So can you tell me a wee bit about the current work of HMI in that area of the curriculum?
Yeah, as you say, Gillian, there's just lots of work on curriculum. You think about the OECD report, the national discussion, lots happening. And we also had the recent announcement about the curriculum improvement cycle. So lots of work going on. So the team's inspectorate has always had a role in curriculum. And it's an area of work that we've always been interested in and sort of forms part of our school inspection work. So we look at an aspect of curriculum when we're inspecting curriculum. But recently we published a report around curriculum design, and it was one of our national thematic inspection reports. And in that report, we wanted to have a closer look at elements about curriculum, just to work out, I suppose, what's working well and what needs to improve and to engage with schools in a different way. So we've started that work on, but it's fully my intention that we do more work in this space of curriculum. It's an area that we haven't been doing as much on as we have done in years gone past. But I think the time is now ripe for us to do more to support practitioners and professionals in the system with curriculum design, curriculum implementation, and the work they're taking forward. So an exciting time for us.
And what were the kind of key messages that your teams were finding, Janie, in that curriculum thematic?
So lots of key messages were coming out. We particularly, the focus of the thematic was to look at curriculum design. Where schools making use of national guidance and national resources and how they were taking forward curriculum design. So we saw some really strong examples. And one of the areas that we particularly look at in curriculum design is how well schools are reviewing and updating the curriculum, because we want a curriculum. We've got our national guidance through Curriculum for Excellence, but we really want schools and settings to be looking at the local community, the local context, the cohorts of children and young people going through the school, and designing the curriculum to meet their needs. So I think we were really heartened by the appetite in Scottish schools to focus on reviewing and enhancing the curriculum, and it's even been more important since COVID.
I was just going to ask you about COVID actually.
Yeah.
What changes you're seeing kind of pre and post COVID in that curriculum space?
So what we've been seeing is the teams visiting the schools really heartened that schools are really looking at that local community, what the local community needs, and how that has changed over COVID. And so I think that's why we've really seen an increase in looking at reviewing the curriculum, looking at the local context as we were called, but also looking globally as well, what's happening and how they can adapt the curriculum. Great focus on the vision coming through from practitioners and the desire to enhance the curriculum and looking at national guidance, looking at national resources to see what they can do differently. So we've got a profession that wants to, it's a bit of a cliche, but that continuously improve. And we were seeing that coming through strongly in our report. Lots of work about pupils understanding the community and the need to work in the community and the needs internationally as well. And I suppose one of the areas that we also picked up probably from COVID was use of outdoors, and increased use of outdoors as well.
And I've been visiting lots of local authorities around Scotland, and I've been blown away by the increase in outdoor education actually. My wellies are a permanent fixture in the boot of my car, because schools and settings are really taking that really seriously.
And no matter the weather.
Absolutely.
No matter the weather.
Absolutely.
So it's not weather dependent. So some really positive stuff.
That's great. What about recommendations? So it's great that you're picking up really positive, aspirations for the curriculum. People really keen to review. What are the kind of key recommendations coming out of the report though? Yeah, so we also picked up some barriers. So some recommendations and some barriers as well. While we're seeing some work where the views of children and young people, parents, have been taken into account in a number of schools, we want schools to do more of that. Listening and hearing and taking on board the views of children and young people as well. We're also looking at interdisciplinary learning. There's more work to have that shared understanding about what it means, how it can support learning, both to provide depth and challenge, but also as a way and a vehicle to introduce new learning as well. Seeing some challenges in secondary schools, particularly around the breadth and that broad general education, and getting a better balance for young people in that broad general education up to S3, and making sure our transitions from learning going into secondary, but also from broad general education into senior phase. And we know this has been a persistent challenge that we've had over a number of years, because I know in previous curriculum reports we've picked up a similar theme. More to be done in there, but there's a lot of change happening in the system in that area as well. One of the key areas that we've picked up in the school is an ask from staff. Oh, interesting.
And staff are asking us, they're looking for more subject-specific guidance and professional learning. So we've highlighted that in the report as well, because I think it's really important that, where we're going out and visiting schools and staff are saying to us, this is what we need, this is what would help us, then I think there's a responsibility on the inspectorate to report that, to highlight that. Actually, this is something that could help. We've picked up some staffing challenges, so we've highlighted that in our report as well. And an interesting area that came out particularly for schools who deliver in the special sector is that they were asking if there could be more advice specifically tailored to support them in developing the curriculum, because it's much more bespoke curriculum within that curriculum for excellence. So some guidance there around what we need to take forward as well. So, and interesting, Janie, that you're flagging that. Yeah, I started an introduction by talking about Education Scotland being one organisation, two distinct functions. I think that's a great example of where the inspectorate are finding key information, and then actually a support function needing to do development in that area to make sure those resources and guidance, etc., are available. Can I ask you about
attainment, Janie? So in terms of those emerging themes around curriculum design, are you picking up any either recommendations or really strong practice in curriculum that is raising attainment for all and accelerating progress and closing any poverty-related attainment gaps?
See, where we're seeing things working more successfully is where schools are looking at how well the curriculum is meeting the needs of learners, and that ties it into that regular review and update. And constantly, I suppose, as part of their own self-evaluation, how well is this improving progress? And is our curriculum progressive? Does it take learning? Is it challenging enough for children and young people as well? And does it engage? Are children and young people motivated and engaged in what they're learning? And it comes back to, I think, the point that I was talking about earlier around knowing your local context, knowing your local community, and getting the views of parents and community and learners as part of that. So that's where we see things are working particularly well for children and young people in terms of raising attainment. Because when we come back to curriculum design, equips children with the knowledge and the skills that will help them to learn. So if the curriculum design is appropriate, then it will support attainment, it will support closing the poverty-related attainment gap, as well as preparing children and young people for future society. So,
and Jane, if I'm an educator listening today and I'm looking at my curriculum either at a class level or a school level, is there any specific advice you would be giving on the back of this report?
Yeah. So I would reinforce the importance of collaboration and continuous improvement in curriculum design, and looking at that, regularly reviewing it, incorporating the views of children and young people, parents and the community, and making sure that your curriculum improvement priorities are specific to your context. And understanding that context, it is so important because it means that you can begin to tailor things. Well,
and having the confidence, I guess, to do that.
To
thinking about your local context and not thinking that Scotland's curriculum's a one-size-fits-all that you need to shoehorn in, but actually, that's strong advice from you around meeting the needs of your young people and the needs of your context.
Yeah. I think, and also, I'd really like to say a huge thank you to the staff in the schools and settings who engaged with us. Our national thematic inspections is one of the areas of our work that I know the teams really enjoy doing. Feedback we get from schools, they enjoy the conversations because we're taking a closer look. But just a thank you to local authorities for nominating schools, and just thank you for the level of engagement that we have with staff and pupils, parents and learners as part of our national thematic work. It's just a different approach that we take, but we couldn't do it without the engagement, the cooperation and the collaboration with the system.
That's great, Janie, and I know that when I speak to head teachers and educators, they're really keen to show off that work. Actually, show off might not be the right word, but actually to share progress that they're making in that space. We've mentioned the curriculum improvement cycle a couple of times, and I know that works early. But is there anything that you can share around how you see the inspectorate supporting the curriculum improvement cycle work?
Yeah, I think it's really important for the inspectorate to be part of the curriculum improvement cycle. The inspectorate is one of the bodies or organisations, Scottish system, that should be and will be working with others to support change. So as part of that, really keen to be involved and have already started some work in that area. So there are two key areas that we'll be involved in. First of all, I suppose before, and that's where we'll be gathering evidence to help inform the work that Education Scotland and teams are taking forward with practitioners around getting into the nitty-gritty. So we'll do some work before, and then we'll do some work after there have been any changes to the curriculum, and really to look at have changes having the effect that we want them to have. Because one of the areas that I know is sometimes the intentions when it's translated into practice on the ground with everything else doesn't always have the desired effect. So we want to do a little bit at the beginning so as our evidence can feed in to the curriculum review cycle. And then at the end of it to say, has it made a difference? Yeah.
And as Chief Inspector, what are your aspirations then for Scotland's future curriculum?
I think the aspirations are key, that they're equipping children and young people with the skills, with the knowledge, with the understanding, with the values that will enable them to participate fully in not only their local community, but their national community and globally as well. You know, I always remember the slides that say you're preparing for people for a system that we don't know about. And we don't know about, but what we can do is equip our children, young people and adult learners with the skills, the resilience that enable them to adapt to challenges and respond in different ways. And also our curriculum needs to set up our country to be for economic growth as well.
Absolutely.
So it's got a key role, and it should be exciting and dynamic.
And Janie, you talked there about that slide that we've all seen a lot about, preparing young people for jobs that don't yet exist and a future that we don't know what it looks like. There's also a slide that often talks about the only constant is change.
Yeah.
And there's certainly a fair amount of change planned in Scottish education. You announced just recently in a test article and in communication to all settings in Scotland that you're going to lead a review of school inspections. And I know that got a fair amount of interest on social media, a lot of positive interest, saying that timing was right and folk were really keen to contribute and be part of that. Can you tell us a wee bit more about what that review is going to look like and what your vision is for the areas of focus and again what you hope to achieve?
So taking up this role and taking up role as the Chief Inspector, I really want to ensure that inspection in Scotland is a catalyst for positive change within education. And it means that inspection is not just about evaluation, but it's also about sparking significant improvement. And it's getting the balance right. Yes, we've got a purpose for providing assurance, but we also have a clear role as one of the bodies that will support improvement. And I want to make sure that all of our inspection models and our frameworks are teeing up to enable us to deliver that for children and young people, because that's our focus. Our focus has always got to be making things better for children, and they're at the heart of every decision that we make. So I have announced a review of our school inspection framework, and what I want to look at is 4 key areas in the school inspection framework. One is around, I suppose, what happens before an inspection, and that's our quality improvement framework, which is currently Higgins, and we're in 4th edition of that. So one of the definites is that we are reviewing the school inspection quality framework. We want to make sure that it's up to date, that it's relevant, because if it's not up to date and relevant, it's not useful to the system, it's not useful to us as an inspector either. So we'll be carrying out a review of that framework. I know that it's something that, we've been out engaging with different stakeholders in recent months, and one of the things we've been asked, when are you updating Higgins? So that's one. So we are updating Higgins, so that's one, but that's the before element of it. Want to look at what we do during inspection, and that's our sort of methodology and our models. So we've got sort of 2 models that we use at the moment, so we want to look at that. Then we want to look at what happens after an inspection. So, and that's from 2 areas. One, where we're seeing innovative, highly effective or effective practice, how do we capture that more? But also where, if things aren't working so well, and what do we do? How do we follow up where an inspection outcome is not as any of us would want in Scottish education? And then the final area of it is a reporting. We report to parents, but do we get the reporting right? So it is a bit of a root and branch review, whole scale.
I was actually just about to say, you stole the words away from me, because I was going to say, so it doesn't sound like this is a tweaking round the edges, Janie.
No, it's not a tweaking round the edges, and we're going to take a slightly different approach to it. I'm really keen. I remember when I was speaking as part of my test interview, and it was like, okay, so what are the actual things you're going to consult on, and what's the time scale? And I said, well, we don't have that yet, because what I want to do is I want to take an approach where we go out and we ask people their views. What is working well? We know the Higgins needs an update, so putting that bit aside, but the other areas, what's working well? What are the areas you want to see changes in? And from that feedback that we get back from people across the education system, then we will then look at the scale of change that we need to make to each of those component parts, and then we'll set our timescales for doing that. So that's why I've not come out and said, oh, here are the 5 key things we're going to consult on. I want to take it a different place. I know there are many things, the feedback that I get from local authorities, from head teachers, from schools about the positive difference inspection has made has been good. So don't want to throw out things that aren't working well for the system, but if there are changes that we can make, then we want to make them as well, and also need to ensure that our approaches are that we have UNCRC fully embedded in both our frameworks and our approaches, because we need to make sure we're fit for purpose. We need to make sure we're relevant, and we need to make sure we're adaptable.
And I guess it would be fair to say, you mentioned just a couple of stakeholders in there, Janie, around teachers, educators, head teachers, local authorities. I think it would probably be fair to say that there'll be a whole number of different views that people will have about inspection. So I'm hoping that people who are listening will be really reassured to hear that commitment around that kind of extensive engagement, listening to the views, and synthesising that as part of the process. You talked there about people's positive view of inspection, and I think you and I are both long enough in the tooth to recognise that often in advance of inspection, staff will be concerned and worried around having an inspection, but often at the other side of the inspection, you talked there about before, during and after. I know that your stats around some of the best professional learning I've ever engaged in are really, really high. How would you reassure someone, Janie, in preparing for inspection currently during a period of change? What would your advice be for them?
So my key advice is to make sure you're carrying out your own self-evaluation. And that's part of your continuous improvement. It's an ongoing element, is key. Because what we ask in inspection at the very start is, what do you tell us about your school? What's your own self-evaluation telling us about your school? Because that's what we base our inspection on, firmly rooted in self-evaluation. And the clearest thing is, at all points, trying to deliver the highest quality learning and teaching for children and young people. And don't over-prepare, I would say. What we ask for what we aim to ask for are the materials, the resources, the paperwork that you already have in your school. We've certainly trimmed down. We're not asking for folders upon folders upon folders of evidence. So be guided by that. But it's really important that you tell any inspection team the story of your school, where you've been, where you're going, how you're going to get there, and how far along the journey you are. And that story of your school is so important for us to understand what's working well, but what your challenges and how you're overcoming them as well.
I think it would be really, really reassuring for folk to hear you saying that out loud, Janie. When you talked about that perception of folder upon folder, I remember as a head teacher preparing, and actually as a deputy head teacher, preparing for inspection, and I had a room full of folders, and wall-to-wall room full of folders, and I learned quite quickly, and that was a while ago, but I learned quite quickly that that's actually not what the team were really interested in. They were interested in, as you've just talked there, that story, the confidence in telling your own story. I also want to pick up on another perception that people often talk about, and that's about experience or engagement of the team. One of the things that I didn't really know a lot about until I came to work in Education Scotland was the extensive role of associate assessors and how you engage a high number of folk across the profession in the inspection process. You say a wee bit about that?
Yeah, so our associate assessors are, they're a wonderful team, and for people that don't know, associate assessors are existing practitioners who come and join us for the week or the days of the inspection. So, and they're a full member of our inspection team. So they come out of school or their setting, and they join the inspection team as a team member. And they carry out the same activities as HMI do, and they help us arrive at our outcomes for the inspection. And associate assessors are really important to us because they really challenge the teams around, this is what's happening in schools at the moment, this is what it's like, and this is the reality of it. So they challenge that aspect. They also help, because they're existing practitioners, in setting the context of some of the challenges that schools and settings can be facing as well. And our associate assessors also get the benefit of being part of the team, actually the professional learning and using self-evaluation, and what inspectors, as I suppose their job is to evaluate, what full-time evaluators do in the approach, to take that and just having that professional dialogue as part of our inspection teams. And I know head teachers also value talking to a peer as part of an inspection team, rather than an inspector as well. So our associate assessors, we usually put out, we recruit them through local authorities or separately to independent schools, and we give them, they have a short interview with us, and then we do we give them some training, and then they do some shadowing, and then they come out and join us 3 or 4 times, 5 times a year as part of inspection teams. And I'm really delighted that as part of the curriculum improvement cycle work for our maths thematic, we've had some associate assessors joining us as part of our national thematics as well, and we're looking to extend that work as we get into curriculum and subject areas as part of the curriculum improvement cycle. So extending that role. But the feedback that we get from associate assessors is they really enjoy the role, and we really value and appreciate the work of associate assessors, and thanks to, providers, directors of education and schools for enabling associate assessors to come out of their school, their setting, their college, their CLD service, and join us, because that's a two-way partnership that we've got in the system.
And I was in Shetland recently, and I was speaking to the Director of Education in Inverclyde, and they were talking both really positively around new associate assessors joining the teams, and just exactly as you're saying there. You said there around CLD and ALC, we've talked a fair bit about school inspection today. I know our inspection colleagues would be raging, for a good Scottish word, if we didn't say a wee bit more about the wider role that inspection plays beyond schools. Can you just say just a wee bit about the range of inspection actually that your teams engage with?
Yeah, so we look across activity right across early learning and childcare, right the way up to adult learners. So our nurseries, our early learning and childcare settings, all our schools, in the independent sector as well. Our CLD services, we've got our CLD colleagues who inspect in our CLD services, but we also work closely with Scottish Funding Council, and we carry out work on their behalf in colleges as well. We also have a role in prisons, where we look at prison education. We also have a look at where local authorities are making changes to school estates, and we report on that. So we've got a wide and varied workflow that our teams. So it's not just about school inspections.
So it'd be fair to say, Janie, that there's plenty going on in talked a few times about a period of change. There's plenty to keep you and your teams busy.
Plenty, Gillian.
Janie, thank you so much. I feel that we could have kept this conversation going for a whole lot longer, but can I just say thank you very much for joining me today, and to colleagues across Scotland who are hopefully listening to this podcast episode. If you've enjoyed this podcast, hit the follow button for a notification when a new episode is published. and keep an eye out on our social media pages for news on the latest episodes. We'll catch you next time. Thanks, Janie.
Thanks so much, Gillian.